me, Connor, and welcome to the Build Your Kids Library. Today, I will be reading Pearl and Her Cheese Bin Quilt. It's about Pearl and her friends Sarah, Sally, and Ella, who learn about the history of Pearl's country, Cheese Bin, Alabama, as well as knitting quilts. Now, let's get started.
Build a kids library where we learn history. The Build a Kids library. Build a Kids
On a lazy Sunday afternoon, Pearl sat playing in the living room with her friends Sally and Ella as the aroma of homemade biscuits, smothered chicken, rice, collard greens from the garden, and Grandma's famous tea cakes filled the house. "Wow, that quilt is amazing," Sally said. "My mom has quilts like this at our house. Grandma told me that I come from a long line of Cheese Bin quilters whose quilts have been displayed in galleries and museums all over," Pearl proudly boasted. "When I get older, I'm going to make quilts too, and one of my quilts will hang over there one day." Pearl pointed to the empty space where she intended to display her work. "That's pretty neat, but what are Cheese Bin quilts? I'd never heard of that before," Sally asked, wide-eyed. Pearl sat up straight with confidence. "Back when my grandma was younger, the house she lived in did not have any heat, so she and her siblings used quilts to keep warm during winter. The families who lived in Cheese Bin, Alabama were very large. Some had 10 or more children, so they needed lots of quilts. They would tear up old clothing to use for fabric. The women would move from house to house quilting during the evening. During the day, many of them worked at the Freedom Quilting Bee. They would use sewing machines to piece together the tops, but they quilted them together by hand." Sally and Ella listened in amazement, surprised that their play date had turned into a fantastic lesson about Pearl's family history. "Grandma always says, quilting is like your handwriting. Quilts are like your handwriting," Pearl explained. "She says every quilt should be different from everyone else's. I asked Grandma how she comes up with so many different designs. She told me she talks to God when she quilts, and He gives her an idea every time. I told her that I am not sure that I will be able to quilt the way she does, but she told me, 'You can only do your best. You cannot do my best.'" "Helping Grandma is exciting." Pearl tossed her hands in the air with a sweet smile. "I get to pick the pieces of fabric that she will use next or thread the tiny needle. Sometimes I thread 3 or 4 so they will be ready when she needs them." Sally and Ella lay on their bellies as Pearl recounted the rest of her story, her voice rising and falling like she was singing a song. "Grandma says quilting isn't always easy. Sometimes the fabric is very thick, and she has to use a thimble to keep from pricking herself. One time she stuck herself, and I could tell she was vexed, but no matter what, Grandma keeps quilting." "It sounds like your grandma knows what she's doing," Ella says. "I bet you can't make one." "Yes, I can," Pearl blurted in response to Ella's challenge. "Since you think you know everything, listen to this. The most important part of the quilt is the top. To make her special designs, Grandma sews many different scraps together. Sometimes she uses my old clothes that don't fit anymore or Grandpa's old t-shirts." Pearl spoke quickly, telling everything she learned, but paused to take a breath before starting again. "When the top is finished, the rest of the quilt is ready to be stitched together. Did you know that?" Pearl crossed her arms in satisfaction when Sally and Ella shook their heads, then went on. "The middle layer is called the batting. When Grandma was little, sharecroppers grew the cotton and they would pick, then flatten it for the quilts. Next comes the backing. Quilters used to use 25-pound flour sacks for the backing, but now we can go to the store to buy everything we need. Do you have any other questions? Pearl asked her friends. No, they all answered in unison. Good, Pearl said. Now when all the pieces are together, the backing is folded into the front and the quilt is binded together. Some people quilt straight lines, crooked lines, patterns, or designs. Sometimes Grandma follows the designs on the quilt top. Then there are times when she sews puzzle patterns. She says that it depends on what God says when they talk. I like looking on the back of the quilt to see the designs. Wow, Pearl, you are right, Ella exclaimed. You know a lot about quilting. Grandma says that me and my cousins need to learn so that the world will all know about our quilts too. The girls hadn't noticed that Grandma sneaked in to eavesdrop and hear Pearl teaching her friends so well. She held a few quilts in her arms as she addressed the girls with a sweet smile. It sounds like Pearl has been watching and listening, Grandma beamed with pride. She knows all about our family quilts and where they came from. We didn't have a lot of money back then, but we always had our quilts. Our elders gave us quilts as gifts, especially when we moved up north. We got them when we married. We even got them when we came back down south for visits. Ella and Sally, I have a gift for you. Here are your very own G's Bend quilts. Take good care of them. Grandma handed each girl a quilt and was delighted to hear them squeal with excitement. On the back of your quilts, I have signed my name and written the name of the quilt. No one else has a quilt like yours. One day you can pass it down to your children and tell them the story of G's Bend quilts. Thank you for reading this book with me. I have a quilt too. I have a quilt too. My Aunt Lissa knitted it for me. She'll knit a whole bunch of quilts sometime soon. Again, my name is Connor.